Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Alexis Lipnicki. Today we'll be dispelling some of the myths associated with being a screenwriter for movies and TV. Our guests are screenwriter Kamafi Byrd, screenwriter also known as the screenplay savant Laura Scheiner, and Cal State Northridge assistant professor and writer Rappaport. Well, let's jump right in. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about the business?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that as a screenwriter, you kind of do it on your own. You know, they say that if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes like an apartment complex to raise a screenwriter. I mean, you need a lot of help to become a professional screenwriter, from your lawyers, managers, agents, and even before you get to that period where you're really ready to go out wide with a spec or a script, you need help just in developing your own voice, your own material, and knowing what you're going to talk about. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that you can do it, you know, on your own. It's really one guy, one script, one sale, and it's frequently not like that.
What do you think, Laura?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that screenwriters make their money from selling scripts. The largest percentage of screenwriters make their money by being hired to write or adapt or whatever the producer's vision. It's very difficult to actually sell a spec script. The percentage of spec sales of the overall movie making in the business is quite small.
How about you, Professor Rappaport? I know that you actually wrote for Days of Our Lives, so what do you think?
What do I think about the dispelling of notions of, I think people think writing is easy in general, because everybody grows up writing and reading. And it turns out that, at least as far as I'm concerned, I find it's not that easy, you know, to do something really well in any kind of writing. You have to bring something to it. And people, for instance, take screenwriting courses and think, well, just show me how to do it. You know, how do I do this and that, and then I'll write a good script. But they wouldn't think that if they took a course in writing a novel, for instance, you know, you think you have to bring something to novel writing, whereas screenwriting seems like a technical skill or something, and I find that it's not a technical skill. I think you really have to bring some artistry to it and something to it, and there's just not that many people that can bring something to an artistry or a skill like that and have something to say. So I think that's the misconception, is that it's not easy.
Now, you and Kamafi didn't have any formal training as far as screenwriting goes, correct?
Correct. I went to AFI, American Film Institute, as a directing fellow. I always just had a knack for writing, and when I was at AFI, started writing for daytime TV, and then got my work on Days of Our Lives through people I knew. And but I'd always written, so I wanted to really branch out and do something else. And in retrospect, I mean, I'm glad I didn't take screenwriting courses, in fact, which is an odd thing for a screenwriting teacher to say. But I like the notion of just failing and finding my way by myself without being told the rules. So consequently, that kind of informs my teaching, as I try not to be too dogmatic or pedantic about it. So I come at it from a writing point of view, more so than a professorial point of view.
Just to, you know, so he says how he got into it. I'll tell you how I got into it. I come at it from a very different point of view, which is about the personality, infusing the personality with the story. And one of the way that I actually got started is I hooked up with a writing group that wrote novels. And I said, well, you know, I want to be the guy who writes the screenplays. And the whole problem with that was, how do you bring screenplays to a novel group? And so the suggestion became, if you want to learn how to develop your own voice, if you want to learn how to develop your own themes, then what you would do is you would start by rewriting screenplays. So out of all the screenwriters I've met, I'm one of the few screenwriters that actually started or learned screenwriting by rewriting, you know, screenplays for movies that had already been produced. And then I took that skill, and then I was able to look at scripts in a very, very different way, as a very fluid medium. I think, you know, when you talk about misconceptions with screenwriters and screenplays, there is no, you know, finished screenplay. You know, anybody who's been writing for any length of time in Hollywood will tell you there's no such thing as a finished screenplay. It's always going to be rewritten, and it's never going to be finished until the movie's in the can and released. So some screenwriters, they hold very tight to the text. They feel like the text is kind of like the holy grail and it's very biblical. I wrote these words, you can't change a thing. I never came at it from that point. I always came at it being very fluid, very adaptable, and knowing that, yeah, man, you want to change something? Let's change it to make it better. Oh, no, we don't need to make this character, white, who's black, just to make him white. Let's keep him black, let's keep it cool. But if you want to change something to make it better, I'm totally with that. And so I tend to get along and have very good collaborations because I'm the screenwriter that doesn't have a problem, changing the script.
Okay. But Laura, you did learn screenwriting in college, and
yeah, I have a degree in film. I think I learned more about screenwriting, not so much from my screenwriting classes, which I did take, but my education was very crit heavy. And so we would spend a lot of time in classrooms watching movies, and then we would rip them to shreds, basically. But it was always about the story elements of it. So I spent half of my college life in the dark watching movies and then dissecting. And I think from that, I got a really good idea and sense of structure and story and, the elements of any type of dramatic writing, whether it's a novel or a screenplay or a play or interpretive dance. It's, it goes back to the Greeks. But but that is the core of any type of storytelling, that you build to a climax, your characters change, those are the, conflict, obstacles, those are the things that make stories. So I feel that my education was, served me well at least as a foundation to become a good writer. But I do agree with the professor that in large part, there is an element of innate ability, talent, whatever it is, and you can't be a good screenwriter without talent, and you can't be a good screenwriter without craft. You need the combination, and you can attain the craft from a lot of different ways. You can attain it the way Kamafi did. There's all different ways, but you need both to write a good commercial screenplay.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Boston University.
Oh.
I would like to add something to the talent and the craft. Okay. And I think you need a story to tell. At the end of the day, and I'm a guy who's been up for different assignments, and sometimes I didn't get the assignment because there was someone who was less technically astute on the screenplay, but just had a fantastic story to tell. So I think you need a story to tell, a really good story to tell. And that, plus innate talent, plus craft, plus a whole lot of luck, and support, and you can do it. And I just want to add one more thing, again, busting the myths, right?
Okay.
So here's another myth I want to bust. And this is a big one. I don't really believe screenwriting is a profession, in the sense that I don't look at it as a profession. On the West Coast, less than 5,000 people are actually paid, working, and make a living solely screenwriting. Less than 5,000, according to the WGA. So So what that basically means is it's an expensive hobby. It's not really a profession. It's an expensive hobby. And I know I'm going to probably get a lot of flack for this, but the reason why I'm saying this is for all those people out there who's aspiring, my suggestion is don't be a screenwriter. Do anything else but screenwriting. Do not be a screenwriter.
But what if that's their ultimate hope?
That is never the ultimate hope, and I'll tell you why.
Then what's yours?
I'll tell you why. Screenwriting is a marriage between, a person's story or a couple people's story and corporate interests. And you have to acknowledge it's a marriage of corporate interests. It's show business. Having that show without the business, you don't have a script that gets made.